School Committee meeting. The meeting is being held by way of Zoom teleconference, and it's being recorded and may be televised live. Ms. Hames, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Ms. Barry?
Here.
Mr. Boncory?
Here.
Mr. Capabianco?
Here.
Mr. Matucci?
Yep.
Ms. Swope? Ms. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Perrin?
Here. I think we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Boncory, if you could, President, if you could please have us the flag.
Sure.
Mr. Capabianco, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance
To
to the flag of the United States of America,
To the Republic,
to the republic
For which it stands.
which stands
one nation,
one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening, Patty?
Let's see any public comment.
No public comment at this time?
No. I don't see any.
Moving on, general information and visitors. There are no delegates or visitors this evening. We're going to review, if everyone has had the opportunity to review the minutes, can I get a motion to approve the amended November 23rd, 2020 minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Boncory, seconded by Ms. Powell.
No, Ms. Barry.
Ms. Barry, I'm sorry. Any discussion? Hearing none. Patty, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncory?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes,
Ms. Swope? Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Yes. Moving on, we have our last meeting minutes, the minutes of December 7th, 2020. I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Motion. to accept.
Motion by Ms. Powell, seconded by Mr. Matucci. Any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none. Patty, can you call the roll?
Yes, Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncory?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
yes,
Ms. Swope? Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Yes. When we do the vote, if people could just unmute so that we can actually get that on the record, so we don't have any mistakes in the minutes going forward. Moving on, financial and business procedures. We have warrant SVW 21-10 in the amount of $91,109.50. I'll entertain a motion to approve that warrant.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Powell,
second,
seconded by Mr. Matucci. Any discussion on the warrant? Hearing none. Patty, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncory?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
yes,
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Yes. Okay, we have two payroll warrants this evening. Can I get a motion for SVW 21-10 in the amount of $725,105.21, and also SVW 21-11 in the amount of $718,802.45.
Motion,
Please.
motion,
Motion by Ms. Swope,
Second.
second by Ms. Powell. Any discussion on those two payroll warrants?
Let it go.
Hearing none. Can we have a roll call vote, Patty, please, for the record?
Yes, Ms. Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncory?
Abstain.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
abstain,
Ms. Swope?
yes,
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Abstain. Okay, there are no budget transfers this evening, Ms. Eccles?
No.
Okay, and there's no buildings and grounds this evening, so we'll move on to reports. We have a subcommittee report from Chairman Powell on the Policy Committee.
Yes, we voted at a meeting last week to, I'll take the transportation for the students first. This would be for student athletes. We authorized, well, the motion that we made, the policy that we authorized, approved, would authorize the athletic director to write a policy and a waiver form that would allow students to travel with other than their parents and other than our buses to go to events. And the thought behind this is that we have, with the COVID, we need to have extra capacity on the buses, which means having more vehicles. And so it would be of use and benefit and perhaps safer for the students if they were not traveling on the buses. So that's the genesis behind, and that's the genesis behind the initiative. And the waiver includes legal liability waivers so that the school would not be on the hook for things that are out of control. Parents would have to sign off. They would have to acknowledge that they understand that the child is in another car and that that car is being driven by a licensed driver who and is properly insured.
So basically, the parents would be opting out of the transportation by the school, and then have to name the individual operator that they're authorizing.
Correct.
Okay, and the other policy that was approved?
Should I make a motion on that one first?
Sure.
Okay, so I will make a motion.
Hold on.
Well,
just a-
then we can just, I'll make a motion that we authorize the, to adopt the policy that would authorize the athletic director to write a policy, the procedures and protocols and a waiver form to allow students to use non-school transportation, with the understanding that that will be limited to licensed adults or siblings who are not on the team.
Do I hear a second on that motion? I will second the motion for discussion. Any discussion, Ms. Swope?
I just have a question, Jen. Because I voted against students going back before we open schools, I have no objection about your transportation policy at all. That's fine. I just have an objection about them going back at all. So I don't know exactly how I should think about this.
You are,
I mean, I have no objection for what you just proposed, meaning the way in which they are transported.
I think that though you don't necessarily agree with them going back, you still can certainly have a say in how those issues are handled.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear in the minutes, that I certainly don't oppose how you have proposed them getting transported.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion before us about allowing the travel without going through the school's athletic department and transportation? Hearing none. Patty, can I have a roll call vote, please? You're on mute.
Patty,
Patty,
you're
you're on
muted.
mute. Patty, you're on mute.
I am so sorry, guys. Barry?
Give me a few seconds.
Yes.
Wow. Miss Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncory?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Yes.
Thank you.
A point of order or clarification on that, Mr. Chairman, that normally that would have to go through a series of readings that we would waive and go on. But because this is for the school, for sports that are happening now, I ask that we enact that immediately based on our policy as an emergency use.
Yes, and I'll deem it an emergency use of not having to go through the double readings, the two readings.
Okay,
The
thank
same
you.
with the next motion as well. It's timely and it falls within what the governor has set for travel.
Okay, so this next policy is for our students, and this would cover students who are traveling out of state, and especially for those who are doing it. Well, it applies to all students who are going to be doing in-person learning or in-person sports of any sort. And it reinforces the state travel guidelines and ensures that they will be either tested or isolate after they get back following the state guidelines. And this would be particularly aimed at anybody who's traveling out of state, and it especially covers multiple trips. So if a student is going out of state multiple times and then coming back and needing to isolate, it covers how we are handling that. They wouldn't necessarily be allowed to do remote school. That would be decided on a case-by-case basis. If it were necessary travel or something that were due to like a bereavement, a death, then the principals would have the authority to authorize them to attend remote school while they're in isolation. So I will.
There's also, Ms. Powell, just for clarification, there's also an opportunity for a student or a parent to seek an exemption for the online learning. Is that correct?
Yes. You mean an exemption that they would be able to continue
Allowed to do remote if
during isolation? Yes, it would not be guaranteed if the travel is not recreational travel as opposed to something that would be a necessary requirement. So
Okay.
for the purpose of discussion, I will propose that we adopt a policy that follows the state guidelines for travel responses that will govern how the students are what they do as far as when they return from their traveling.
Can I have a second to that motion? I'll second the motion for discussion purposes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So in regards to this policy, if a student is traveling and it isn't, for the death of a loved one or some other reason that's deemed acceptable, like how do you treat that? So for example, if a family has a second home in another state in New England and they want to go for a week and come back, do they then have to isolate, and are they then required, they're not able to do remote learning, or you have to get an exemption? Like, how does that process work?
Lisa, why don't I ask you to elaborate on that?
Sure. So the travel guidance that was put out, the travel order that was put out by the governor is the basis of this entire policy, with a few additional items that are relative just to school. So right now, the governor's order, you can't go to specific states, which I believe is every state at this point. If you travel, this order is in place for everyone. Adults going to work, staff members coming here, and students going back into the school. So if you were to travel to New Hampshire, I have a home in New Hampshire, you either have to quarantine for 14 days when you return, or you have to have a negative COVID PCR test done within 72 hours of your return to Massachusetts. So there are ways to make sure that if you do travel to a second home in Rhode Island or Maine or New Hampshire or Vermont, that you can test prior to coming back. So that's the state's order, and it's what they require. What we have added to it is some clarity around what does that mean for attendance of kids when they return to school. So if you left for a hockey tournament, or if you left to go to your family's home in Maine, someplace in another state that was on the list of states that the travel order is in place for, you have to follow those rules. So how does that affect you if you went to your own home over the weekend and came back? If you don't get if you don't have a negative test to produce to the school district upon your return, then you have to quarantine until you get that, or until the 14 days expire. That will lead kids into school if you return on a Sunday. It means if you don't have the negative test, you can't be in school on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday until you either get the negative test or your 14 days are up. So how do those absences affect your schooling? As of right now, we don't approve vacations for students in which they can just take a week off and it's okay. Those are considered absences for the majority of our students. Is always an extenuating circumstance. But if requested by a parent or a family member that to talk to the principal about it being an extenuating circumstance, we may then allow kids to actually access their learning remotely, given various situations. If you have to travel for the health of a grandparent, you have to take your child with you to Florida to do that. Just speaking with the principal there's some flexibility allowed in there. But right now, we consider those days absent from school, which is a relatively large impact on students. And so we don't have a lot of parents that travel during the school week. But now remote learning and COVID, it's allowed families to travel because everything is remote. However, when we move to hybrid, we won't be fully remote. So the kids will be needing to be in person in school. Students participating in athletics as well during the time of quarantine. If they are traveling, they won't be able to come back and participate in athletics, even if they're fully remote. So if you're a fully remote student and you go away for the weekend, you still have to follow the mass travel rule, and you have to produce a test, negative test results, to the principal or the athletic director to show that even though you're remote, you're not positive for COVID, so you can come back and practice with your team. It's actually the safest way to do it for our students. And we don't know who's traveling over vacation or even during the week when those students are fully remote. So it's a check and balance for us, but it's primarily the entire state governor's order around travel is what we're implementing. And again, just adding something relative to the attendance, if that made sense.
Ms. Swope?
Lisa, thank you, Mr. Chairman. How does this impact teachers? So if teachers were to travel, are they also remote?
Oh, yeah. So the state travel order is in effect for everybody. So it has to be treated the same way. But if there's going to be any change beyond the state travel order, the governor's travel order, if we were to enact anything beyond that, that would have to be collectively bargained with the union in order to do that. As of right now, all teachers, all staff members, anyone who works in the public school has to follow the same general travel order as everyone else in the state, which is 72 hours before you return to work. If you chose to travel, if you get a negative test, then you can come back to work. If not, you have to quarantine. Of course, both the state guidance and our expectation is that teachers don't travel in a manner that would impact their ability to come back to work. However, the policy is in place by the state first, and if we're going to go deeper than that, then that needs to be collectively bargained.
So just give me an example. So if somebody does travel to Maine or to New Hampshire over the vacation,
Mm-hmm.
they report that, then they don't get paid, or when they are for
Yeah, so it would depend on the circumstance. Where we're moving to hybrid as of January 4th, if teachers cannot come back to the building to teach in a classroom where they'll have students in front of them, it would be difficult for them to teach from home, based on the fact that we've, I think, maximized the number of people in the community of Winthrop that are willing to work in the public school. And we've already hired those people to work in classrooms where we have given permission for teachers who need ADA accommodations for medical reasons to stay home during hybrid. So the amount of substitutes we would have to be able to allow somebody who traveled to stay home and teach remotely, the kids are in the classroom. So it's hard for you to teach from your house if the kids are in your classroom in the school, unless we would be able to provide an additional person to sit in that classroom. The chances of that after we go back are slim to none, based on how tight we are with staff and all the people that we've hired over the last month.
Okay, I think we should stick to the policy that's here and not run to the right or the left of what it is. This is regarding students right now, and that's what the discussion should be limited to. We can always go back to that new business at some point, but right now it's the policy that's in front of us that needs to be discussed. Any further discussion on the policy? Okay, Patty, can you call the roll?
Miss Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Powell. Thank you very much for explaining the policies to us. The next is homeschool applications. Ms. Gallivan, do we have any further homeschool applications that need to be approved? And if so, what are your recommendations?
Yes, we have 3 new ones, a 5th grade, a 6th grade, and 9th grade. 2 are new and will begin right after the break. I recommend accepting those. And the 3rd is a student who's been a long-term homeschooler who is just re-upping their program for an additional year.
So you recommend approval on all 3?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's our total now to 25 currently.
25 homeschool. Okay, I'll entertain a motion right now to accept Ms. Gallivan's recommendation as to approving the 3 additional homeschool applications.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Swope, second by Ms. Powell. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Patty, can I have the roll call vote, please, for the record?
Yes, Ms. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Next up on the agenda is Superintendent report. Ms. Howard, do you have anything this evening?
I do. I have a few items. So I have an athletic update from Athletic Director Serino, and I'll read through that. The winter season is off to a great start. Both coaches and students, athletes are doing great, adapting to all the new COVID protocols, excellent compliance from our students, and support from our coaching staff. We have 121 student athletes registered for sports, for our sports programs. And we have boys varsity and JV basketball up and running, girls varsity and JV basketball, boys varsity and JVarsity hockey, girls varsity hockey, and varsity gymnastics. Swimming is currently postponed. That's because we co-op with Lynn English, and they are not allowing winter sports at this time. Hopefully they're going to be discussing a probable return date for athletics in Lynn soon, and when they do that, we'll be engaged in that discussion. The winter game schedules are going to be released the week of the 28th. The schedules are constantly changing due to the COVID issues in other communities, who's up and running, who has to shut down. Once they are ready, they'll be available on the athletics homepage of our website, and information regarding spectators at events as well as live streaming is going to be sent out the week of the 4th. We are close to finalizing our ability to live stream events because of the limited attendance. Not being able to fill the gym is going to be difficult, but we still want to give our parents the opportunity to watch, or family members to watch. It's important to note that per MIAA rules, no families, no parents or others will be allowed to attend away games. So if your child has a game in Swampscott, the parents won't be able to be in the venue watching their student athlete, but hopefully we'll have an app for that by next week. And at our home games, we are only allowed to have 2 family members per student athlete in attendance at the games. So more to come on that on our website. Mr. Serino will be sending something out to all the student athletes and their families, so there be real clarity on that. Update on the BINAX testing. We're awaiting the kits to be delivered to us, and we are awaiting a spot for the final training of our head nurse, who is going to be a train the trainer model for our nurses on administering the BINAX kit. We expect to have everything in place by early January. And again, this is for testing symptomatic staff members and students, COVID symptomatic staff members and students. It's the quick 15-minute test that allows us to give you a quick answer and then send you off for a PCR or PNR, whatever they're called, tests. That is the more definitive overnight, typically, is when you get the results for that. We had our first flu clinic last Friday, combination with the town of Winthrop. We worked with Meredith. She was able to work to get us flu vaccines, as everybody knows, because I've sent out probably 20 different notices that said flu vaccines are required for all students as of December 31st. There are some families who have exemptions, and if anyone has questions about that, whether you are eligible for an exemption, you could just reach out to the school nurse in the building in which your child attends. I don't know if folks have seen the new student learning time standards that was set by the Department of Education. So they came out with standards about a week and a half ago for all schools regarding synchronous and live teaching hours. This is new. This was not in place when any school in Massachusetts, any public school built their remote or hybrid learning plans. This was sprung on us a week and a half ago. Many schools are now in the process of having to adjust their remote and hybrid learning schedules, even though they've spent a tremendous amount of time building them prior to the Department of Education deciding to move the goalpost once again. So I'll just give you a quick overview of that. Per the standards, remote districts must provide an average of at least 40 hours of synchronous instruction over a 2-week academic time. And you are not allowed to have any fully asynchronous days. Asynchronous is when students are pretty much on their own without a live teacher or a recorded lesson in front of them. Hybrid districts must provide an average of 35 hours of live instruction over a period of 2 academic weeks. And live instruction is the sum of in-person and synchronous instruction. I know that's confusing to many folks. What I am happy to report is Winthrop Public Schools, as well as every other public school in the Commonwealth, had to submit those plans about a month and a half ago to the Department of Education regarding your hours. And that this past Friday, the department notified all the public schools as to who needs to now revise their plans to get up to speed with what the expectation of the Department of Education is. And there is no required action for the Winthrop Public Schools as we met their standards. We met these current standards back in November when we submitted our original plan. So there is one list that I am happy not to be on for the Department of Education, because it's a tremendous amount of work to revise those schedules, and it is certainly disruptive to students and staff who have to go through that process. So kudos to our principals and our curriculum director for spending endless hours ensuring that we can get as much synchronous time in and live teaching with our students as possible. PTO did the Hope for Holiday. This was a very unique thing done by the PTO. Our PTOs are typically building based, so one per school. Anyone who's had kids knows how exciting it is to be part of the PTO when your child enters kindergarten, and you do the bake sales and all the raffles and sell the candy. And by the time your kids are in high school, unless you're working on money for the prom, typically it is more difficult to engage. So this year, given the pandemic, it has allowed for the PTOs to get together and put their minds together and think outside the box. And they had done a virtual fundraiser, and they determined themselves that they felt that they should do it as one school. And then whatever they receive for funds to donate that equally between the 4 schools for the purpose of making sure families had food security, additional food security, and the opportunity to buy certain items for their students during this holiday season. So each school yesterday received $2,700 worth of gift cards. And those gift cards were given to the principals, and they work closely with all the groups in their buildings, the adjustment counselors, to figure out what families are in need of some support, and those cards will be distributed to those families. So that was just an awesome full school effort, on the part of the PTO, and we were very grateful for their thinking, as well as the donation to the school district. Another happy moment in my week, the T-Mobile hotspots have arrived. They have been a long-awaited box of hotspots. So we received 150 hotspots for family in need. So this is actual little devices about the size of your phone that can plug into a computer and provide internet for an individual child who either has disrupted internet in their home, maybe no internet at all, or multiple kids in one home using the internet of the home, which causes Zoom to go down quite often. We have identified, along with the help of a couple of different groups of people, have helped us identify families in need. Mia More has helped us. CASA has helped us. 21st Century has helped us identify families who are struggling. And more importantly, for I think the committee to know, our own teaching staff and principals have identified these families as well. And the way they do that is by monitoring student engagement, really watching our students day to day to see who's logging on, who's tapping out, whether they're tapping out because they're playing PS4 or whether they're tapping out because their internet went down. And we engage families to really figure out what the problem in the home is. And again, sometimes it's our students being silly, sometimes it's really internet issues in where a home may be overburdened with a number of folks on one internet server. So this will really help our students. We will be distributing those over vacation to make sure everybody is up and running for January 4th. I don't know, speaking of January 4th, I don't know if folks have seen the videos. If you haven't, I will be sending you those that have been produced by the middle school, the high school, ATC, and GFB, videos for families explaining the hybrid transition. I actually just watched Ms. Pearson and Ms. Tucker's before this meeting. I've actually watched it twice. So it was a combination of sort of a Saturday Night Live skit and a Sesame Street episode. I was waiting for Mr. Noodle to pop out at some point, but it was really well done. And at the lower elementary level, they did a video for families, but also a video for kids to orient them to the school, to show them the school through the video, and to talk about the hybrid process, these uncharted waters that we have yet to dig into. The video itself is entertaining, and especially the Fort Banks one, which is geared towards kids, I would say, between 4 and 7. So it entertained me for quite a long time today. And kudos to the staff. Those were all recorded and put on the websites. Some are going out, many went out on the 18th, but they're easy access for all families, and there is translation available for the videos as well as the PowerPoint presentations. That was a big win for us and something different that we haven't done in the past, to the degree that it was done to explain the hybrid transition, which is definitely confusing, to say the least, to many parents. Staffing updates. We have approved, in preparation for the 4th, we have approved a number of staff members who wouldn't otherwise be able to return to school because of a medical condition. And we have approved them working from home. In order to approve them working from home, we would have to have a classroom monitor in place, somebody in the classroom to keep our kids safe and oversee the process in the classroom while the teacher teaches through their Chromebooks to the students within the classroom. At the present time, we have 3 teachers from the Gorman Fort Banks that will be working remotely, 0 teachers from the Cummings, 4 teachers from the Winthrop Middle School, and 7 teachers from Winthrop High School. And when I say that is currently, that is as of this past Friday. We also have a number of teachers on maternity leave, which we have been able to cover those maternity leaves to date. And we have several more that are going to last us right through June, which is exciting for the families, but certainly a trick to try to balance the ADA accommodations of having people work from home plus our maternity leaves. So the transition, again, just more on the transition to hybrid. We're prepared to start the hybrid model on the 4th. As you saw, and I talked about already, the staff has been preparing parents with lots of information. We'll continue to do that. Parents will get the travel information. Again, they've already received the state travel information from me once. We will be reaching out to them with this new policy that we have in place to make sure everyone is aware of what they have to do. The Board of Health has not recommended any changes to their last update, in which they voted to recommend transitioning no earlier than January 4th. And so we are still sitting with that date. However, as you're aware, the virus remains very unpredictable, as does our staffing. Returning on the 4th remains a plan, but it's important to understand that if there are a lot of staff members come that point in time that need to quarantine due to becoming positive between now and that time, which can happen overnight, as we have all experienced, I'm sure. They maybe have to quarantine because of close contacts and the requirements of quarantining in a case like that. Folks may travel, they may have to travel, they may choose to travel. We're going to need to make adjustments as we begin to make this transition over. If there are not enough teachers, come 2 weeks is a long time. If there's not enough staff to cover certain classrooms based on individual circumstances of a staff member, somebody gets sick or has a close contact and they have to quarantine and we don't have coverage, which we believe we've exhausted for the most part, exhausted our hiring opportunities. We will have to be in touch with families to let them know that as that happens. Hopefully, it won't, but again, this virus being so unpredictable and people's health being unpredictable, you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen come that date. The other thing that could happen is that the Board of Health at some point may decide that the town and the community numbers are too high. If that is to happen and they want to give that information to the school committee, they can recommend that to the school committee and the school committee can decide if they would like to hold an emergency meeting or if they don't need to do that and then, there's no need for that, we won't. My hope is that we're not going to have to do any of this, but I think we need to be honest with ourselves and our families that this virus is a moving target. And as I sit here today and say we're ready for the 4th, I can tell you we are ready. However, we have to watch it every single day and make sure we're ready at the end of every day for the next day. So that's my superintendent's report. I usually like to end on a high note. My high note is I believe we will be open on the 4th, and hopefully our numbers in the community will continue to or start to trend downward. I don't know, Meredith, if you want to add anything to that, if you're still there.
I am. I'm in listening mode. Hi, everybody. It has been during the pandemic. Last week, we crested over 100 cases per 100,000 over a 14-day period. By the calculations I quickly did just a few minutes ago, I believe that we will see a trend down somewhere in the 90s this coming week. I am pretty concerned by the amount of folks, the demand for testing that has been going on in the town today. I hope it's just that people are being diligent or potentially that they believe that it's a safety net for visiting and having large social gatherings over the Christmas holiday, because it's definitely just a snapshot of that day and that moment. And like Superintendent Howard said, we want to start to see these numbers go down. So if we can start the downward trend, I think that we'll all feel a lot more comfortable and being able to, see what each day holds as we roll through this. But I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any tonight.
Does anyone have any questions for Meredith Hurley? Thank you, Meredith.
Can I just ask one question, please? Meredith, I sit here in my office, so I could see the line looping from sort of down by my house all the way past my office and past St. John's. And people oftentimes will say, is it just Winthrop people that are being tested? Which I believe it's not just Winthrop people that are being tested, but in terms of our numbers, I know you've repeated it about 1,100 times, but the numbers that come out are not reflective of every person in that line they're reflective of the Winthrop people. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. The numbers that we report is our residents to 02152.
That's okay.
Thank you. Ms. Swope?
Meredith, we're clearly in code red. Is that right?
So yeah, last week we were clearly in code red. Our percent positive was at 6 or a little bit above 6. And then our incidence rate was, I think it was 100.7 off the top of my head.
Yes, it was. I think 1.1, 107.1.
So, you know, it's such an interesting thing to try to assess, only because I can't assess the percent positive. I usually have a sense by, you know, the amount of cases that I'm taking off every morning or into the mornings as to where we're at. So, you know, I could tell you that the incidence rate is probably sitting squarely in the low 90s for this coming release of data that'll happen on Thursday night. But if the percent positive is 4 or even 4.9, we won't be in the red.
But
So,
we are right now.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
you're going to hate me for this. So anyway, I'd like to move that since we are currently in code red and we have high community spread, that we suspend our plan to return in January and revisit our current plan for February 16th or March 1, whenever we can, you know, inoculate our teachers and administrators so that they can feel safe to return, and therefore our students will be safe to return.
Do I have a second to that motion? Hearing none, the motion dies.
All right. At least I wanted to say it.
And you have. Moving on, personnel matters, Ms. Howard, do we have any appointments, resignations, retirements, postings, or leaves of absence?
We do. We have a few appointments. Ms. Caroline McKinnon has been appointed as an ESP at Winthrop High School, and Mr. Ryan Coleman has been appointed as the art teacher for Winthrop High School. We have filled several lunch, bathroom, and hall monitor positions, and I don't believe at this point there are still any openings. I think we, again, maximize the number of applications we had. We have no resignations, and we have no retirements. And we do have two postings, one for a special education ESP at the Gorman Fort Banks, and one for the Student Information Systems Manager, which is the retirement of Miss Judy Bono. We do not have any leaves of absence. And that is all.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. New business this evening. We have a retirement citation for Judy Bono. Can I have a motion to accept? It should be in your packet.
Accept the resolution.
Motion by President Boncory. Can I have a second? Second by Ms. Swope. Okay, I'll read the resolution. And I have to say, after 35 years, that Judy was the first face that new families saw as they registered their children for school. So she was really the liaison to the public as people came in to bring their children to our school system. And she did an amazing job. And we got a lot of positive feedback over the years about how well she did and how well she explained the process and was so inviting into the system and a bevy of information. So the resolution reads as follows. Whereas Judith Bono has completed 35 years of service to the students of Winthrop, and whereas Judith Bono has been a devoted and loyal friend and colleague, and whereas Judith Bono has had a strong positive impact on scores of Winthrop students throughout her display of genuine concern for young people, therefore be it resolved that the school committee of the town of Winthrop expresses its congratulations and best wishes, and that it is voted, made part of the official minutes of the Winthrop School Committee on December 21st, 2020. Ms. Hames, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, Ms. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes, absolutely. And good luck to Ms. Bono on her retirement. She really deserves it, and she did an amazing job while she was here. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. I believe we've already handled the policies that went through the subcommittee. I'll go to public relations. President Boncory, do you have anything this evening?
Just to stay on track, please be safe. I want everybody to enjoy the holidays and have a great time, but be safe about it. No large gatherings. When you're not eating, please wear a mask. Social distance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Matucci, do you have anything for this evening?
Set.
Mr. Capabianco?
All set.
Thank you. Ms. Barry, do you have anything for this evening?
Just to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays.
Thank you. Ms. Swope, do you have anything this evening?
I know lots of people that are sick, including members of my family. So please, please try to stay well and please try to follow all the guidelines. It will make a difference in this community and hopefully make a difference for all of our students and our teachers and administrators.
Thank you, Ms. Swope. Ms. Powell, do you have anything this evening?
Yes, I want to congratulate the seniors on a very successful parade on Sunday. They had 2 truckloads of donations. That was organized largely by Sophia Vitale. So congratulations. I'm glad they were able to do something. I know it's been a hard year for them.
You stole my thunder. That was my public relations moment. But yes, they did an amazing job and such a great idea. Moving on to adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Matucci, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Barry. Ms. Hames, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. And
Good
have a-
holiday.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Thank
Night all.
you.
Stay safe,
Take
please.
care.
Be
Have a
safe.
great holiday, everyone.